Field Report Number 8. The Paralysis Paradox. Sector: New York City, Earth. Year: 1964. Status: deeply puzzling. On the night of March 13, 1964, a young human named Kitty Genovese was attacked outside her apartment in Queens, New York. The assault lasted 35 minutes. During that time, 38 neighbors heard her screaming for help. Lights turned on in windows across the building. Curtains moved aside. Eyes watched. And in 35 minutes, not a single human called for help. I have spent considerable time studying human behavior across your species. Humans routinely display extraordinary courage. You run into burning buildings. You dive into rivers to save strangers. You donate kidneys to people you have never met. And yet this case has puzzled my research team for decades. Why do humans sometimes become completely passive when surrounded by others who are also witnessing a crisis? The answer is not cruelty. The answer is not indifference. The answer is a cognitive glitch that is hardwired into the human social brain, and it activates automatically in crowds. In 1968, two human researchers named John Darley and Bib Latane were so disturbed by the Kitty Genovese case that they decided to test this paradox in a controlled laboratory setting. They placed human subjects inside a room. Then they slowly filled the room with smoke through a vent. Here's what happened. When a human was alone in the room, 75% left to report the smoke within 4 minutes. They saw the smoke, they recognized the danger, and they acted immediately. When 3 humans were placed in the room together, only 38% reported the smoke. And when the other 2 humans in the room were actors trained to sit calmly and do nothing, only 10% of real participants reported the emergency at all. The mere presence of other calm-appearing humans had reduced individual action by 75%. This is the bystander effect. The scientific principle is precise. As the number of witnesses to an emergency increases, the probability that any single individual will intervene decreases. But why? What is happening inside the human brain that produces this outcome? There are 2 simultaneous mechanisms. Both are essential to understand. The first mechanism is called diffusion of responsibility. When a human witnesses an emergency alone, the entire moral weight of that situation rests on them. There is no ambiguity. There is no division. If you do not act, no one will. But introduce 10 more witnesses, and something changes at a neurological level. The perceived personal responsibility each individual feels is divided across the group. Your brain performs this calculation automatically and unconsciously. 10 people present? I am only 1/10 responsible. Surely someone with more expertise, more proximity, more confidence will step forward. Someone else will handle this. From an evolutionary standpoint, this circuit made sense in small tribal communities of 20 to 40 individuals. Roles were clear. Relationships were known. Emergencies were immediate and visible. But place 38 humans in separate apartments separated by walls and floors, and the anonymity of urban living, and the ancient circuitry misfires catastrophically. The second mechanism is called pluralistic ignorance. Humans are extraordinary readers of social signals. You constantly observe how others are responding to an ambiguous situation to determine how you yourself should respond. When you hear something alarming and look around to find that everyone else appears calm, your brain concludes, the situation must not be serious. If 38 people heard that scream and no one is panicking, perhaps I am overreacting. This assumption is catastrophically wrong, because every single observer is performing the exact same calculation simultaneously. Each person looks at the others and perceives calm. In reality, every individual is frightened. But collectively, they appear composed. The result is a room full of alarmed humans who each believe they are the only alarmed human, and so none of them act. 2 incorrect assumptions, each reinforcing the other, producing paralysis. Now let me show you what is happening inside the human brain during these moments. Neuroimaging research has identified a specific sequence of neural events when humans witness someone in distress. First, the anterior cingulate cortex activates. This is your brain's resonance system. You feel what the other person is feeling. The pain is registered. Then the prefrontal cortex engages. It begins evaluating, should I intervene? What are the costs? What are the risks? And here is where the social context hijacks the decision process. When the prefrontal cortex calculates that multiple other agents are present, it begins computing social risk. What if I overreact? What if I am wrong? What if I embarrass myself in front of these witnesses by acting on a situation that turns out not to be an emergency? The more humans present, the higher the perceived social cost of a false intervention. And humans, as a species, are exquisitely sensitive to social judgment. So the brain, trying to protect you from social humiliation, keeps you still. And people who need help do not receive it. This effect extends far beyond physical emergencies. Research published in the Journal of Applied Social Psychology found that bystander effects operate powerfully in workplace settings. Employees who witness misconduct report significantly less often when they believe other colleagues have also witnessed the same event. In online environments, researchers studying content moderation found that harmful content with millions of views receives proportionally fewer reports than content with small view counts. The logic of the bystander effect operates even without a physical crowd. In family systems, the bystander effect means that when one member is struggling, Other members often assume another relative is already addressing the situation, and so no one does. But here is what my research team finds most significant. The bystander effect is not a character flaw. It is not evidence of human selfishness or callousness. It is a statistical artifact of large group social cognition operating in contexts it was not designed for. And because it is a mechanism rather than a choice, it can be overridden. The override requires one specific technique, and it works by dismantling both mechanisms simultaneously. In any emergency, identify a single individual in the crowd. Make direct eye contact. Point at them specifically, and say, "You, in the red jacket. Call emergency services right now." Not "someone call for help." That phrase distributes responsibility to everyone, which means it assigns it to no one. Not "can anyone help?" That activates pluralistic ignorance. It invites observers to look at each other and conclude the situation might not warrant action. But "you, in the red jacket. Call now." That statement collapses the diffusion of responsibility to a single point. That specific human now cannot perform the calculation that someone else will handle it. They are the someone else. Research from Columbia University found that this single intervention, direct eye contact, specific designation, clear instruction, raises bystander intervention rates from 16% to over 85% in simulated emergencies. The same effect that paralyzed 38 neighbors can be neutralized by one person who knows this technique. I also want to note the converse application. If you are ever in an emergency and need help, do not shout "help" into a crowd. Pick one face. Lock eyes. Point at that person. Say their specific clothing color. Give them a specific task. You transform them instantly from a bystander into a participant. And finally, the element of this phenomenon that I find most remarkable from an alien perspective. After the Kitty Genovese case, researchers interviewed the 38 witnesses. They expected to find indifference. They did not. Almost every witness reported feeling distressed. Many had been unable to sleep. Several had assumed someone else was already calling. At least one had turned on the radio to drown out the sounds because they did not know what to do. They were not unfeeling. They were caught inside a cognitive trap they had no language to name. You now have the language. The bystander effect is real. It operates in crowds, in offices, in families, and online. It is not a moral failing, but understanding it is a moral responsibility. Because knowledge of the mechanism is precisely what breaks it. You are no longer one of 38 anonymous neighbors. You are one person who understands something that changes how you will act the next time someone needs help. And that changes everything. Subscribe for more alien field notes on the hidden mechanics of human behavior.